Yeah, so I'm going to introduce our next speaker, and I think if you follow AI and the intersection with security, there's a good chance if you're in this group, you're following this gentleman, Daniel Miessler. And to me, Daniel's a very unique guy. What's interesting, he understands the technology at a very granular level. If you follow Daniel, he's often talking about coding, but he's also a very independent thinker. I mean, I find Daniel's often commenting on how this relates to some aspect of humanity and life. Always something thought-provoking. So, Daniel, please join us. Thank you.
New York, y'all. All right, everyone hear me okay? Awesome. All right, thanks so much for having me today. Really excited to talk about what I think is happening with AI and what's about to hit us coming from AI. Specifically, I want to talk about what I see coming in terms of the big trend of AI hitting us and its impact on humanity, and how I'm currently using AI and how I'm sort of advocating that other people start thinking about it as well, and then how I recommend people start preparing and get ready for what's coming. So I'm not ultimately trying to scare you here. The first few slides are going to be a little scary. And I'm not just trying to give you a bunch of cool tools, which I'm also going to do that as well. But my goal here is actually to have you think differently about AI. I'm sure we all have our current notions right now and how we're just seeing ChatGPT and all these different tools. But I'm hoping that at the end of this, you'll basically think about it in a different way. Okay, so I want to start off talking about AI itself. So this is a scale I put together for sort of estimating the amount of impact from previous tech revolutions. I rank them from top to bottom, but I'm not overly invested in the exact ratings or categories here. But you see some pretty big things here, right? You see printing press, internet, mobile computing, all these sorts of things. And my question to everyone here is, where would you put AI on this list? Would you, in terms of impact to humanity, would you slot it in the middle, the bottom, the top? Just think about that. I put it at the very top. In fact, this is not even to scale. I think it's quite a bit above where we have it here. And it's such a strong claim, I want to back that up. So we've heard a million times that, okay, yeah, everyone says, when cars replaced horses, when machines replaced certain tasks, there's always been a big change that was happening, and then there's always been this risk or a complaint that, okay, it's about to replace humanity, and humans have a big problem. And this goes back into the 1800s, right? And the argument is, we've heard that before. We have AI happening again. Everyone's saying this again. And again, it's not going to be a big issue. And I think that's wrong. I think the problem with comparing the current situation to previous ones is that before we were actually replacing work tasks with previous revolutions. It was like we're replacing doing a particular type of work, like an elevator operator, for example. That got replaced by a mechanical elevator. And you have those, as tech evolves, you have more and more of those tasks getting replaced. And this is kind of a breakdown of the different phases. This is one breakdown. There's lots of different ways you could break it down. But you have different pivots that have to happen. So if you notice what we pivoted to as humans when we went through these previous revolutions, we migrated to doing different things, right? So when the machines came, we basically switched over to fixing machines. When electricity in the engine came, we became engineers and started working on those things. And then you have the same thing with electronics and computers. We became computer engineers. In other words, we transitioned away from the mechanical to things that are more intellectual or more creative, and ultimately more human. And that is what makes this one completely different from the previous ones. This one is not about replacing the person in the elevator who used to run it, or another particular task. This time, the thing being replaced is intelligence itself. And even more scary, creativity itself. So what do you pivot to if your current job gets replaced by an AI or AI-robot combination? And you're like, that's okay, I'll just pivot to something else. Well, what do you pivot to if it's also good at that? And it's getting better a lot faster than humans are getting better. And also keep in mind that this machine learning and everything has been happening for decades, but this current phase that we're in for AI, I mean, really this started like a year and a half ago. This is like day one. And I monitor this stuff all the time, and it's like, if I don't watch content about the trends for like 3 days, I'm behind, massively behind. And in fact, all the stuff I built 3 days ago is now obsolete. I just rewrite it using the new tools. So this stuff is just now hitting. So that's why I put AI at the very, very top of this list. In fact, so basically off the top of the screen here. Basically, humans are out of pivots currently because AI doesn't replace tasks. It replaces intelligence itself. Now, Yuval Harari wrote a book about this called Homo Deus. This is the book he wrote after Sapiens. And in that book, he talks about the useless class, which is a super scary word to me, or phrase. It's, he basically says that we as organisms, we as animals, we are algorithms. And of course, we make algorithms with computer science, and AI is algorithms as well. And it's not really realistic or smart to think that somehow those algorithms won't be as good as ours. So this is why he thinks this is a huge issue. Now, I sort of think about this in a very stoic sort of way. And I mean stoic in the old sense, not the new sense. The new sense is essentially that you don't have emotion. The old sense is resilient or a positive framing. So I think the framing matters a lot here. On the left here, you see where people immediately go when they hear this, especially if they're prone to this sort of thinking. It's essentially, human had the option not to use AI, okay? We could have just stayed with normal tech. But no, we were stupid, we chose AI, and now we're doomed, right? And that is the left model here. And it's a way to start sort of panicking and freaking out. I reject that framing. I prefer a different framing that basically says we have the same amount of choice picking AI as we did picking the automobile or telephones or whatever, because when those tech revolutions happened, it just happened. And that was the particular moment it was going to happen. That's when it did happen. And there's no one who could sort of keep the cork on or put the cork back on. And AI is the same. It's just happening, and we're just riding along the wave. In my mind, we are over here on the left of this sort of ravine. We've got like a capitalist economy based around what humans can do for a corporation. And a lot of the things that we do to make money are about to be replaceable by AI in a major, major way. And as Harari talks about, a lot of people will have nothing to offer that economy. There's just nothing they could do that it can't do better. Now, on the other side, and this is what I'm happy about and building towards, is a new type of economy, like a human 3.0 type vibe, where it's actually more about humans connecting with humans. It's a different type of economy. I'm not even sure what this looks like. I don't think anyone is. But the real trick is, it's not that important what the other side looks like, because we have to get through this first, right? The problem is the middle. The problem is the crash in between. The impact on society when most people can't offer anything to the economy is going to be major. So as of about a year and a half ago, this is essentially what I've been doing, is building systems to try to get us to the right side. So basically, I'm choosing optimism, even though I don't even know if it's possible to get to the other side or what it even looks like. But not doing that, I feel like it just it produces panic, and I choose optimism over that. All right, so that was, like I said, that was a bit heavy. Hopefully the optimism on the green side is sort of offset that a little bit. But what I want to talk about now is what I've been doing for the last year and a half to sort of tangibly and practically work with AI and use it. So first, a few realizations. By the way, I went independent like the month before ChatGPT launched. So it was like perfect timing. I'd already been in ML and AI and stuff for like 5 years before, but I basically launched going independent rather than doing pure information security stuff the month before. And when this happened, I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. So I basically dove 100% into AI 24/7 right as ChatGPT launched, which I think was like October, November of 22. So the first realization I had in 23 was that prompts, prompting, prompt engineering, AI whispering, all this, it's basically the main currency. Prompts is the main currency of AI, or at least the way I interpreted it. So they're like everything to me. I think essentially in prompts. In fact, I was just in the back like writing a prompt based on hearing what the previous speaker was talking about. And everything I do or everything I hear and process, I basically turn into a prompt. So that was my first sort of takeaway. Second takeaway was that there was just so much tooling. There's ChatGPT, but there's like 10 ChatGPT competitors. And then there's a whole bunch of command line tools, and there's a whole bunch of mobile apps. And then now there's voice apps and stuff like that. So when I talk to people and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? How are you using AI? They're like, yeah, I don't really know what to do. I use ChatGPT sometimes, but they're just kind of overwhelmed. So it felt really powerful, but kind of confusing at the same time. And what this got me thinking was that AI's problem was not capabilities, because there's so many capabilities, you could do anything with it. The problem is when you're in your day-to-day routine, you're actually doing a task. It's not easy to go from that to using one of the 197 different tools. So essentially my takeaway there was AI doesn't have a capabilities problem, it has an integration problem. So that made me want to just completely step back and sort of look at what am I actually trying to do. And I put together this workflow for myself. It's somewhat modified at this point, but this is essentially what I started with, which I have my goals and my purpose, what I'm trying to do on the left. And then I have this workflow, this pipeline of how I process information. So at the very top, I'm capturing, I'm gathering from all these different sources continuously. So I'm reading, I'm watching videos, I'm having conversations. And I basically want to get the ideas out of there. I want to use those ideas to update my models, how I view the world. And then have that update my algorithms for how I tangibly actually do things, like testing a web application for vulnerabilities, because that's my background. And then ultimately turning that into better decision making. And the reason for this is how many people go to talks like this, or talks, technical talks, where they're like, oh, here's like 10 new ways to hack an application. And work pays for the conference. You go there, you listen, you nod your head, you're like, okay, cool. You maybe take a note on a piece of paper, which you'll never see again. And 3 weeks later, you're like, someone's like, hey, did you go to that one conference at Black Hat where they talked about hacking web apps? You're like, yeah. What'd you learn? Yeah, I don't really remember. I think I got drinks with Chris and Stacy. I saw some talks. I don't really remember. And it's like, I hate when that happens. So this workflow is a way of sort of consolidating and tangibly getting things from the things I learned. So once I understood that flow, I started breaking everything into tasks. So it's like, these are the challenges, the problems that I have in life. I want to be closer to friends. I want to get better at hacking web applications. I want to find more vulnerabilities. I want to be better at threat modeling. All these sorts of things. And then I take those challenges and I turn those into components. So it's like basically like a gear icon for solving that particular challenge. And then for each of those tasks, I take that and turn it into an actual pipeline. And I got this idea from Andre Karpathy. I saw him talking many years ago about how they built the team and the mechanism for Tesla full self-driving. So he talks about like 192 components. I don't remember how many components it was. But he talks about how it's like a whole bunch of not very smart AIs and automation pieces. And it basically chained together and went through this giant pipeline. So you would have like sensor data coming in at first. You'd have different AIs looking at that data. And it would move through this workflow. And each stage, something would be done. There would be a transformation. It would pass on to the next stage. And if you have like a car run a stop sign, the team would come together, look at this giant 192 component thing, and they would say, where did that happen? What was the mistake? And they find the thing. It's like, it's number 37. We've got to go in there, isolate it. They make the tweak. Boom, now the thing doesn't run the stop sign anymore. And I was like, that turned on a light bulb for me, that everything is a pipeline. So it basically became this. Have a goal, break it into components, turn that into a pipeline, and then apply AI to that pipeline. And then as new stuff happens, new AI comes out, or I see a better way of doing something from watching a talk or something, I modify the pipeline. So I think this granular way, this modular way of thinking about things is going to become commonplace in the next few years, largely because of AI and sort of meta optimization type things. And I think, at some point, everyone's going to be thinking this way. Hopefully, if you're in this talk and you like what you're hearing, you could sort of adopt this earlier and have this advantage years before other people. All right, so let's jump into the tooling itself. And this is going to be pretty exciting. So I spend a lot of my time in the terminal. Terminal is like my favorite happy place. Right now on Mac OS, used to be Linux. But I like to do everything from the terminal. And what I started doing is figuring out how I could stay in the terminal and use AI as all the new tools are coming out. And so this started probably February of 23, so super early, right after ChatGPT. So essentially, the concept for this, the first way I built it was I would have the command line tool. It would run. It would go up and hit my own AI, which did a particular task, and then would send that on to OpenAI, and I would get the result back in the terminal. And that was the workflow that I built. And as a result of that, I created all of these. And Ed was talking about the Unix mindset. I love the Unix mindset. So every single one of these, you can pipe into or out of. So these are all individual chainable pieces of AI that all talk to each other. So you could like scrape a site, pull out ideas, take notes, like do all these different things, but the output of one can become the input to the next one. And I just started building up this giant library over the course of last year. So I want to take an example of one. So I've got like 3,600 notes, I think, on my Apple Notes. I just wake up and I'm like, oh, that's got to be a thing. And you don't know if it's going to be a blog. You don't know if it's going to be a tweet. You don't know if it's going to be a project, open source. Maybe it's a book. Who knows? But I have a million of these ideas. So one of the first things I created was the ability to take this and I send it into a command called essay. Just those bullet points, send it into a command called essay, and the result is a full essay. And it actually writes it in my voice. So I could tell it to write in my voice, but I could also give it examples. The current one that I have, there's another one, another version. It actually writes almost exactly like Paul Graham, which you should only use for demonstration purposes, obviously, because it's not too cool to copy someone's style, but it's extremely effective. I mean, it writes wonderful essays, especially if you use the Opus model from Anthropic. Unbelievably good. So now I have this essay, which came from a few bullet points. I took that essay and I pipe it into another command called tweet or tweet thread. And this actually builds out a full tweet thread of like 10 different tweets chained together. It actually tells me what art to put into each tweet. It actually gives me the prompt to put into Midjourney to make the perfect art for that particular tweet. And I just did exactly what it told me and posted my first one. It got 350,000 views on Twitter. And that's going from a note written still in bed to an essay to the tweet thing in a matter of like 30 seconds. So the idea there is you have a concept, you have an idea for something you want to get out in the world, you write an essay about it, boom, you put it on social media. And that workflow is super simple. In fact, you could just do it all in one command. You could do cat notes, pipe to essay, pipe to tweet, and it'll just pop out. So really powerful. This one is called Analyze Paper. So I'm sure everyone in this room, or lots of people in this room, are getting sent papers. They look very official, got all the authors at the very top, all the PhDs and MDs and everything, and the schools that they went to. And then you have this giant abstract. It's like a paragraph that's like 40 pages long. It's giant. And you're looking at it, and then you start going through. It's all mathematical diagrams, equations, all that. This thing takes one of those papers, and it analyzes it for quality by looking at study size, the statistical relevance of the results, everything. Breaks it all down, looks for conflicts of interest with if they mentioned any inside of the paper, and gives you an analysis of how likely this paper is to be reproduced. Of course, it's guessing, but it's pretty good at it. So it takes something that's relatively opaque, because a lot of these papers are pretty hard to read. I would argue on purpose sometimes. Kind of hard to read, but they're also very long. And it basically gives you a quick summary in like 30 seconds. This one is the opposite. So I could have taken that one note, catted that one note, send it to create academic paper, and it'll build a full LaTeX document that looks like an academic paper, complete with all the sections broken out and everything. This one, if you only get one thing from this talk, you want to start using this thing. It is unbelievable. It's called Extract Wisdom. It's one of the first ones that I made. So I am able to right-click any YouTube video, or actually just copy any text whatsoever. But you could right-click a YouTube video, and I could send it into this tool. And it will listen to a 4-hour Lex Fridman or Andrew Huberman, whoever it is, a giant 4-hour in-depth conversation. And it emulates if I had taken 2 to 3 hours of manual notes. So it extracts all the high-level ideas out of it. It extracts the best quotes. If they mentioned, oh yeah, you read Paradise Lost and blah, 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 and what about Homer and the Iliad and blah, blah, If they mention any of that, it comes out in a section called references. It also has a section called facts, where if they mention things that are just interesting, but they're easily third-party verifiable, but they could be things that I just didn't know. That's in a facts section. And then at the bottom, it's got recommendations of like what comes out of either one of the speakers actually physically recommending it, or if it's just naturally unfolds from the content. So I essentially have, I never would have been able to take this amount of notes, because first of all, it takes 4 hours to watch it. Well, are you gonna pause and take notes? I mean, we're talking about a 6-7 hour operation to watch one video. This takes 30 seconds to run. Or depending on the model, maybe like 3 seconds. So really, really powerful. And you could basically send anything. You could send a presentation, a talk. With some of the new models, you could send an entire book, and it'll do this. This one is essentially what my workflow looks like. So I find a cool thing. I have a keyboard shortcut, and I also have a shortcut for my phone. But a keyboard shortcut is Option-Command-X, I think, on Mac. I just set it up inside of Automator. And it actually sends that up sends the content that I'm looking at up into the cloud, runs my AI on it, and drops it into a Google Doc, so I have a perfect summary. And so whenever I go get ready to do something with a customer, or I get ready to do a newsletter, I actually have a summary of everything that I learned in the course of that week. And this is my workflow. I use Feedly. So every single thing I have comes into the top of the funnel in Feedly. If I click that Read Later button, or if I swipe to the right on my phone on any story, it does that same thing. It grabs that content, goes it up, and sends it through that entire workflow and summarizes it for me. So this is all happening because of Zapier. Zapier essentially allows you to connect anything to anything else. So up here you have Slack, you have email. I mean, this thing can monitor your email and do different things, auto-create drafts. It's insane what this can do. So all I'm doing is hooking into Zapier and having this action take place, and then the action that's actually happening is it's dropping into a Google Doc at the end of the workflow. It's appending to the end. So keyboard shortcut, a swipe, or a click, either way, I'm engaging that workflow. And if you're wondering how I actually get the raw content, because sometimes it's hard to scrape, one of the tools that I use is called browserless.io. It's basically a bank of headless Chrome systems that you send an API request into it. It'll go get any content for you and return it to you. So it's a really powerful tool for doing that type of scraping. OK, this one, I imagine, is going to be super useful for everyone in the room as well. This one is called Label and Rate. This takes any content, such as the video I was talking about before, and it tells me how quickly I should watch it, or if I shouldn't watch it. So I have ratings all the way from you must watch this week, absolutely. It is amazing. And it actually puts a score on it. All the way down to watch within the month, watch if you have time, and then the last one is maybe skip it. And again, that comes back in 20 seconds, so I can avoid spending 4 hours on something. It also gives me the label, so I could tell what it's actually talking about, plus a summary. So this is a huge time saver.
Welcome to the Huberman.
And that was Huberman Lab. All right, this one is probably super useful to everyone as well. How many people get here tons of newsletters all the time? And you don't have time to look at them, right? You could actually send any one of those newsletters in. It'll pull out the main ideas, the companies that were mentioned, any sponsors that were mentioned, any key takeaways, any opinions that came from the author. Basically parse the thing in like 10 seconds. This is another way. Main theme here is integration of AI and having AI kind of with you all the time and using it all the time. This is one integration that I use. It's through OpenAI, and it's that's Scarlett Johansson's voice. I don't know how they got away with this. Maybe that's one of the lawsuits that they currently have. I don't know. But one of the voices sounds exactly like Scarlett Johansson, and my favorite AI movie is Her, from, I don't know when that was. But I basically tap on the back of my phone, and she pops up and is listening. And so I could just ask a question. I've had multiple 45-minute conversations where she's sort of teaching me about whatever, the mysteries of life, cosmology, all sorts of things. And it's a really good way to keep AI close, as opposed to thinking of it as like a distant thing that's kind of hard to use. And yeah, recently I had her explain cosmic background radiation to me, which I've been struggling to like understand this for like 18 years. And after a few minutes, I got it sorted. I gave it instructions to talk to me in analogies. And so she's always using analogies. And when I don't get something, she like dumbs it down and makes it easier with a simpler analogy. So it's really a trip to have this interactive conversation with AI that you could invoke just with your voice or by tapping your phone. I also have this same tech built into Vim, which is my text editor of choice. So whenever I'm using Vim, I could just instantly, one, it has Copilot, which is amazing. I'm sure lots of people are using Copilot here. So that's integrated. But I also built a custom integration that calls all of my own AI backend by selecting any piece of content inside of Vim. I could just do leader T, which is space T, and it'll pop up a thing and I type a question. What does this code do? And it'll explain it to me. So I'm trying to integrate as many places as possible. So hopefully you see how flexible this stuff is. Talked about knowledge management, all these different things you could do with it. But being a security guy, I've been in security for like 24 years, I think. And I want to talk a little more about some security use cases. Okay, so this one takes any incident talked about in a quick little blog write-up, all the way to like an in-depth investigation, all the way to like a DBI report, a DBIR report, as shallow or as deep as you want to go with this thing. You take the content, you put it into this tool, analyze incident, and it returns you a JSON. And the JSON, this is insane. It tells you who the attacker was by name. It tells you who the target was, also by name, assuming that's in the content. It also tells you the size and origin of the attacker, the size and origin and type of organization of the target. It tells you the technique they used. Based on MITRE, it tells you the software they went off after, and actually lists the name of the software. And it gives you a MITRE breakdown of the complete attack, and it gives you recommendations for remediation. And what's really powerful about this is I've turned this into a database. So if you take like the top 1,000 hacks ever, and you pipe them through this, which I've done, you now have a database where you can say, okay, I'm a small bank, I'm a community bank, what are my most likely ways of being attacked? And that's not based on theory, it's based on what's actually happening and actually being reported. So that's a pretty cool security use case. This one looks at threat reports that come out. CrowdStrike and DBIR are two of the big ones that a lot of people get. So if you basically look at one of these, the typography is usually really good. They've got lots of images, lots of graphics. It's an awesome report. But once again, sometimes it's hard to get through that 120-page report or a 90-page report. So you basically pipe this thing in. It pulls out all the trends, and important to me, all the statistics of like what's actually going up and down, and any recommendations. So once again, you're talking about 20 seconds versus however long it would have taken you to review the whole thing. Okay, this one I just added last week. Really excited about this one. So a buddy of mine is a content creator around malware and stuff like that. And I think he's into Apex Legends, the game. And there was an Apex Legends tournament, $5 million prize. And everyone was in the middle of playing, and suddenly they got interrupted. They're like, I'm being hacked, I'm being hacked, I'm being hacked. They had to stop the competition. It was all bad. Basically, the whole thing was off. So my friend, John Hammond here, did a walkthrough on his YouTube channel, took like 20 minutes, and he was just piecing together, oh, I found this thing on this forum. I found this thing on this conversation on Reddit. And he's kind of piecing it together, and over the course of 20 minutes, he's verbally talking about it and showing some screenshots. So when he got done showing me that, I was like, yeah, that sounds super cool. And I immediately started, and this is kind of a recurring theme here, I immediately started thinking about AI. How what he just told me was a pipeline, and I want to apply AI to it. So I took his video and created a new component called Create Investigation Visualization. Now I took his video and piped it through here, and it produced this. And it's color-coded. It shows you the actual relationship between the different items, who did what, when, the timelines, the actual relationships between them. And you could send anything to this thing. Here's another example. I sent that one to a buddy who tracks actual bad guys. And this article had just come out from Insider. This is like a 30-page report, tons of visuals, tons of pictures, and it's a very, very long report. It's about the Havana attacks, which are honestly quite frightening. It's essentially what they believe to be Russian actors targeting US officials from like down the street, and they're shining microwaves at their homes and at their workplace. And so you're sitting there working, and suddenly you feel like you have like an ice pick, like going into your head, and you can't remember things, you get dizzy, and you look outside and a van drives away. So this article was a deep investigation into that, but it's hard to track everything because it happened over multiple years, and it's like, oh, then this person took a plane trip, and then they did this, then this attack occurred. It's hard to track it. So I gave that article, just the article, and put it into here, and it tracks the whole thing. Basically, who did what, how they interacted, the timelines, and everything. And again, you could write your own little timeline here, and it will do the same. Everyone's familiar with the XZ attack that happened a couple weeks back? So I put that into here. There was a pretty good write-up about it. And this shows the entire flow and gives you a clear visual of what happened. It also gives you an actual analysis in text as well as the visual. Okay, so very much in theme with the conference. This one is called Create Threat Scenarios. So this is a generic threat modeler. You could take a very complex like PRD document. You could take a technical spec for an application. You could take anything you have. You could even give it a scenario like I'm trying to protect my suburban home from attackers or whatever. The analysis I gave it here was I'm about to go do a photo shoot in Sao Paulo, and I'm going to bring like $39,000 worth of cameras with me. What should I do? So this thing breaks down the most common ways you're likely to be attacked, bad things that are likely to happen to you, the different controls you could use, the residual risk around that, and then essentially gives you a summary at the end. And again, it doesn't matter what scenario you throw at it. You can give it one line of text. You can give it an entire book, and it will still produce this for you. All right, so I want to talk about a project called Fabric. So what I did as of January of this year is I took all that functionality that I had been building for the last year and a half, and I put it into an open source project called Fabric. And it's already public. You can go use it right now, including all the stuff that we've already talked about. So when we launched it, I was really surprised about this. It stayed on the GitHub #1 for like 6 days. And it's got almost 10,000 stars. We got tons of people contributing new patterns. And it's really powerful because it's not now just all the stuff that I've submitted, but there's so many different submissions from the community as well. And oftentimes, I'll get a submission that actually fixes mine. It's like, hey, if you did this different, it would be better. I make the change, and now the whole world has the better version because of that person's comment. So it's like, the theme here is human augmentation via AI. So when one person upgrades something or submits something, it's making the whole world more efficient with AI. And what's really important is these patterns, this is what they look like. These are the prompts that Fabric works off of. It's all markdown. It is super clear to read, to edit, to adjust. So if someone makes an adjustment to like step 3 or step 5, we make that adjustment, which improves it. It improves it for everyone who uses it after that. And this very clear articulation of things is what makes it so easy for AI to use it. And it's not just OpenAI, it's all the Claude models. You can actually use local models, so it doesn't even cost you anything to use. And it's really easy to install. So you basically do a pipx install, and it goes out to OpenAI, gets you your results. And there's also a GUI, in case somebody doesn't want to use the command line. All right, so we talked about what I'm afraid of, and why I'm optimistic, and some of the tools that I'm using. So what I want to talk about now are some recommendations for how you can kind of get ready for this thing that's coming at us. So the first thing is like deeply knowing yourself and what you're actually trying to accomplish in the world, and all the different tasks that you're trying to do to get that done. And you absolutely need this before you can move on to the next step, which is breaking those goals or those challenges that you have in life into discrete tasks. Because AI doesn't actually do anything for us, it just magnifies us, right? So you can't optimize what you can't articulate. And then you want to take those tasks, and like we talked about before, break those into actual pipelines. And so that's like collecting, finding vulnerabilities, finding attack surface, whatever those different workflows are, and then maybe making fixes or doing remediations. And finally, I recommend that you think of kind of everything in this way. Not all the time, but I think about life this way, I think about work this way, I think about everything in this way of breaking down tasks into pipelines. And finally, I think the most important sort of prime directive here is to think about all of this AI stuff that we're doing, at least in my opinion, it should be for the purpose of magnifying our life, magnifying humanity, magnifying what we do every day, right? And I think that mindset is what's going to help us get ready. So I'm really worried about what's coming, but like I said, I'm choosing to be optimistic about it. And I really believe that the only way out of this thing is to go through it. And I hope this way of thinking about it will help you on that path. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Daniel. That's great. I mean, I feel like you've given us a lot of homework. I don't know anyone that's put so much thought into how you integrate some of these tools into your work and your life. We do have a few questions from the online group I'm going to start with, I think. They're very good ones, I think, Daniel. This is very specific. Is there a good way to summarize the latest 4,000-page federal spending bill? ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot can't handle the size. Come across that one, Daniel?
Yes. 4,000, I said?
4,000-plus page federal spending bill.
Oh, that's rough. Yes, you can break it into pieces. Mm-hmm. So you can do what's called vector embeddings to turn that document into vector embeddings. Mm-hmm. And then what you do is you ask the AI questions that use that vector database. Yeah, I'm not sure 4,000 pages will fit inside of any context window right now, but that'll be coming soon. It's actually another open source project I'm kind of working on is I want to automatically parse all legislation and have summaries for it. Yeah, a little bit of a spoiler here, but I want to automatically parse all those bills. I want to automatically parse every single donor. Also automatically parse every single lawmaker's votes up and down, and then map the connections between them. So that's...
Good, good. Let's go to the group in New York here. Any questions we can have, Daniel? There's a question up here. We'll get a microphone right to you, sir. It's coming along. There we go.
Thanks, Daniel. My name is Aditya. I think I consider it more as a very informational and more like one of the best motivational speech, I would say, in a long time. I have a question on what are your thoughts for the AI-related regulations, and particularly in relation to the new generation, because you see that Europe is coming with the AI Act. I don't know how much is it followed, but do they really grasp things? And the reason I say, because again, we all pretty much in the security space, but at the same time, we are at a generation where we have seen, as from the last presentation, like a time where the Unix systems are there. We know these are the systems and we can take a decision, but the new generation, which is basically you call them digitally native, right? We are digital immigrants. That's their only source to get the information, right? And if these AI models or things like that, which we keep hearing all about, hallucination, what they're pumping in, are there any regulations, or what would that word looks like? So if you have any thoughts around that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a lot of regulation. I think there's going to be decent regulation in the US because I'm not sure if anyone's tracking CISA. I believe there's someone from CISA here. CISA is just doing an amazing job. Yeah. They have merged what a government should be doing with what's like real on the ground, and they're being logical about it. So I'm optimistic about the US. I'm a little worried that the EU is going too draconian and might just limit innovation, but I'm not super clear on the details. But I definitely do think there needs to be regulation. OpenAI has talked about this quite a bit as well. The place to watch is not actually the big models. The place to watch is the open source. I did a demo. I was doing a class somewhere, and I was doing a demo of like, show me how to cause unrest in the United States, like political and like different types of unrest. And I gave it to an uncensored model. By the way, if you look at open source models on Hugging Face, I mean, we're talking about 600,000 models, and like tens of thousands are uncensored, which means you can ask how to make weapons, how to hack things. And that's where I'm worried the innovation is going to get stopped by government, because somebody is going to do something bad, and then they're going to show, hey, look, I did this. I got the thing by asking an AI. And then that's going to get posted. That's going to go viral, and then the government will react, and they might react too strongly.
Good, good. I think we have time for one more question in the audience. Is there anybody else here? Okay, we'll do one from the online group here. Here's one. How can any organization make sure that with AI, their privacy is not at stake? Because the more you go AI, the more you're exposing your thoughts to the world, the internet world.
Yeah, that's a great question. This is a tough one. I'm going to have a hot take here. Unfortunately, the relationship between unlocking your privacy and basically giving everything and having extraordinary results is a direct tie. The more you give it, the more you tell it about everything. If you're a company, you basically give all your dirty laundry, your worst logs, everything. If you're a person, you talk about your trauma, your relationship troubles. You basically make this thing your soulmate. That's when it produces the best possible results. So kind of similar to the two sides with a ravine in the middle. I think nobody is going to stop everybody from putting almost everything in. You're going to have some people that just go Amish and just move to a farm and turn off all their gear and just say, I do not want to participate in this. But in general, people are going to give everything because it offers so many benefits. And I think what's going to happen is eventually the hacks will happen and a lot of people will get very, very uncomfortable because you won't be losing in a hack your social security number or bank account details. They'll hack one of these companies that does the personal AI, where you've put everything in. They hack one of those companies, everybody who used it, that's their soul essentially online. That is their innermost details, private conversations, their journal, everything. But here's good news about that. Eventually, that will all get out. There actually won't be any secrets anymore. If it goes that direction. And I think that's an interesting world where nobody can be embarrassed. Nobody could be sort of admonished for, because everyone to the left and right, everyone knows they have the same things. So that's one option, which is like radical openness, which actually, ironically, kind of removes the need for privacy. It's so weird to think about, we used to have, which one, Yellow Pages or White Pages, was where you had personal details in the book. Was that White Pages?
White Pages.
White Pages. Yeah, that used to be just everywhere. It's like, John Smith, here's my address, here's my phone number. So I think we might return to that radical honesty.
Yeah, well, that's a good one to end on. And if you haven't subscribed to Daniel's newsletter, Unsupervised Learning, danielmiessler.com, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, you're gonna want to do that. Thanks, Daniel. I appreciate you doing this today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.